Good morning. My name is Brett Kisker. You can see my name on the screen. I'm with Northland Caps, obviously, if you can see behind me, but I'm also a member of the Northland Education and Business Alliance, or NEBA. And NEBA is a network of education and business organizations that have partnered together. Our vision is to promote and provide business-driven educational opportunities for you guys, because you, our audience, you're our next generation of business leaders, and that's what we want you to understand. I'm going to be your host during this session, but I do have two other people who you might or might not see on the screen here with me today that are going to help me out. So one is Adam Jelinek. He works for Magna LMV up in Liberty, and the other is Julie Lewis, and she works for the Clay County Economic Development Council. And just a few notes before we get going here. First of all, the session has a hard stop at 9:40. And until then, what we're going to do is we're going to have these two, Susan and Sam, share their professional history and some insight about their career field here in Kansas City. But we want to make this feel more like a conversation. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there should be a Q&A feature. And we want you to use that space here to ask questions, and then we will bring them up to the speakers here to answer. We might not be able to get to them all, but we're going to do our best. And when the session ends, we'll also have a quick survey for you to take. So last but not least, this session is being recorded, so you can go back later on and you can watch it in the near future whenever we get that posted. So with that in mind, I would like to introduce to you Sam and Susan. And Sam, why don't you go ahead and kick off and tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional history here.
Yeah, first, thank you so much for having me. The chance to talk to students is, like, honestly, it's one of my favorite things that I get to do through this job. It's very important to me. I remember when I was on the other side of, not this literal screen, but the other side of this conversation. And I remember I just always enjoyed it, and I felt like I took something away from it. So if I can do that for anybody here, it will literally make my day. We're limited on time, so anybody listening, if you have something that we can't get to, my email address is easy to find: Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Literally happy to help any way that I can. My name is Sam Bellinger. I am one of the sports columnists at the Kansas City Star, kansascity.com. My career path is kind of weird. I felt like this is what I wanted, like this literal exact job is what I wanted when I was like 14. Like sometimes I joke, like I went from wanting to be an astronaut to a sports writer. There was no in between for me. And I thought that was kind of weird to be that sure. So I wanted to start early to make sure, because I didn't want to be 25 or 35 or something like that and realize that I'd wasted all this time. So I started at my local newspaper in Lawrence, Kansas, is where I grew up, and started there when I was 16. And just did whatever nobody else wanted to do, basically. Went to college, kept working at newspapers, eventually, started covering games, and had an internship in college that was really important for me. Learned a lot, and had some work that was published that really helped me when it was time to get a job. And that happened right after I graduated. I was lucky enough that something opened up at the Star, and covered high schools for about 5 years, and then covered baseball, basically the Royals, for another 5 years. And then I've been one of the sports columnists for the last 10. I love it. It's a great job. I get to meet a lot of interesting people, tell a lot of interesting stories, see a lot of great moments, Chiefs, Royals, colleges, everything else. So it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, and again, I want this to be more about, like, that we're talking about what you guys want to talk about. So I'm open to anything.
It's awesome. Thank you. Susan, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Susan Hyland, and I currently work for North Kansas City Schools in their communications department, but spent 25 plus years in the news side of broadcast journalism. I, like Sam, in high school, realized that this was a career path that I wanted to explore, and was in a high school newspaper, a radio reporter, did the morning announcements, and then went to college and worked at a local radio station in news and promotions. After college, I worked in radio for 2 or 3 years, and then made the transition into TV. And as many TV reporters and journalists know, you usually move from market to market. So I started out in Wichita, moved to Evansville, Indiana. Then I went to St. Louis, Chicago, New Haven, Connecticut, and then back to Kansas City, which is my hometown. So I was thrilled to move back here to Kansas City. I stayed 17 years at Fox 4 and enjoyed covering news here in Kansas City. And then just recently, a couple of years ago, made the transition into doing kind of the same thing, but for North Kansas City schools. So I still go out and report and do stories and shoot videos, but it's a lot, the interviews are a lot cuter with little kids, and they're nicer, and they don't mind when you walk in with the camera, whereas most other people run the other way when they see a news crew coming your way. So that's kind of my background, and happy to answer questions either during this forum or afterwards. Television, and I'm sure Sam can attest to it, journalism in general has changed dramatically over the last couple of years, and I'm sure the students will want to ask about that type of thing, but that's about a thumbnail sketch of my background.
Yeah, that's great, guys. I appreciate the introductions, and I see some questions starting to roll in right now in the Q&A area. So again, for you guys that are in the crowd, we got 25 of you at home watching this, and maybe more if you're sitting in a classroom and it's your teacher that signed up. But what we want you to do is post some questions there so that we can start to answer them. And Adam here is actually going to take over with the Q&A. So Adam, if you want to kick us off here, we want this to be a conversation.
Sure. So the first question that we have is, how much education is required to be a sports journalist?
Many people would say not much, but it was, yeah, 4-year degree for me, and again, I was kind of had this in mind, so I went to school and majored in journalism and did all that. I don't know that your degree needs to be in journalism. I think it helps, but I don't think it needs to be in journalism. It's even in sports, and Susan could talk to this more broadly, but even in sports, being a journalist is, you're supposed to know a little bit about a lot, right? The job is basically, you talk to experts who know a lot more about specific topics than you do. And over time, you start to learn a little bit about a lot of different topics. So the journalism helps in sort of, there's ethics classes, there's, interviewing, there's story structure, there's all those things that it really does help with the journalism degree. But some of that, if you have the right people, if you have the right help, the right mentors, you can kind of learn on the fly. But you do need a college degree. You don't necessarily need a master's, a graduate degree. I don't have one. I just have a 4-year degree. But yeah, college education. And can I say one more thing? Like, I think the most, one thing that I'm not sure is taught in schools, like you have it on your own, maybe, or you can develop it, is like curiosity. I think that is a huge thing in journalism. I think Susan would agree with that, but it's just, the more curious you are about different topics, the more you're able to ask questions that get people talking about what's important to them, the better your stories can end up.
So the next question that we have is, do any of you have any background in photojournalism?
I'll start real quick. No, none. We take videos sometimes, like in the locker room. Well, in the times we're allowed in the locker room, there's not a pandemic going on. But no, I'm pretty terrible at taking pictures. That is not my strength at all.
And I video journalism, yes, I do have a background in that, but as far as still photography, no, I'm pretty much, aim and shoot and hope it turns out, and then, work on it in post, if I need to lighten it or crop it. No, I don't have a fancy camera. I have a video camera, but not still photography is not my forte.
Yeah, that question though, I think it does hit on something pertinent to not just journalism, but a lot of different jobs. Like the more different skills you have, like it'd be great if I could, if I was better with pictures with the camera, video or still. The more different skills you have, the more marketable you are, the more valuable you are.
Absolutely.
The better you are.
What was the first thing you published?
Oh gosh.
We want to know what you did at 16.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Like not counting like student papers and stuff. I actually, the first thing that I remember, and this wasn't, it was super awkward, guys, and I don't really recommend doing this. But when I was at the Star that first summer, or I'm sorry, I said the Star, the Journal World when I was 16, and I mean I cannot emphasize enough like how little a part of that newsroom. It was. I typed in obituaries. I did. They ran this like poll about like your favorite comic strips, and so I counted like hand counted all these ballots. I think Garfield won. But the while I was doing that, the Journal World ran this story, this news story about Lawrence High, where I was going to school, and I thought it depicted Lawrence High incorrectly. I thought it was a poorly done story, and I was 16 at the time, so obviously I knew everything in the world, and so I wrote as part of a journalism. I think it was the newspaper class. But anyway, as part of a class at school, I basically like wrote a very like critical column, I guess, piece about that, and sort of, and the publisher. It was a bad idea. I don't recommend it. And the publisher actually wrote something back that was like pretty patronizing, which I'm sure I deserved. But they ran what I wrote in the newspaper, in the Journal World, as like a guest column, which I was stunned. But that was probably the first thing I ever wrote, was calling out the boss of the company that I was working at not being paid. I don't.
Good career move.
Right. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm here. I guess I survived it, but I don't know if I recommend that.
So the next question we have is, do you get to choose what kind of story you want to cover?
I feel like I'm hogging the ball here, Susan.
Just real quickly, at TV stations, you have editorial meetings, which I'm sure all news organizations do. Twice a day, you get to go in and pitch your story, kind of like Shark Tank, and try to sell the producers and the news director on your story for that day. Sometimes you win, sometimes the mayor's news conference wins, or something else will trump anything that you pitch. And if it's a good story, maybe you could do it the next day. But yes, you do get to choose some of the stories that you get to cover. That's where, and I'm sure Sam will agree, that's where you do some of your legwork off hours, or trying to drum up some of these story ideas and work your contacts and find those compelling stories that you want to tell, that interest you. And I know he said that you have to have a natural curiosity, or you could be like me and just be nosy. That works as well too. So yes, you do get to cover some of the stuff, but then sometimes you're just assigned, and I'm sure they get tired of it. A COVID story, go find a COVID story, another angle, because that's what people want to know about right now.
Yeah, mine. My answer is going to be pretty similar to Susan. I'm lucky in that I have a lot more control over what I do in this job now than I did when I was covering baseball or high schools. And pretty much like on every Monday morning, sometimes Sunday nights, I'll send my boss a list of just kind of what I want to do this week. And maybe if there's a long-term thing, like there's a thing that I'm going to start, I actually started yesterday and it'll run next week. But, and he's really good at, yeah, sounds good. But the understanding is like, there better be something about the Chiefs. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of like, the charge is to write about what people, sports fans usually, but sometimes not, are interested in Kansas City. So there better be some Chiefs in my plan, or else maybe it will get rejected.
So out of curiosity, I'm hijacking the Q&A for a second. How much do your Bellinger Minutes play into that? Yeah,
I get ideas from that. Like I actually, when I got this job, I was terrified, like in my bones about like how I was gonna, you know, do the job and not be exposed as a fraud. And so that was like sort of a cheat in some ways, like, okay, maybe I can find out what people want to read about this way. So I absolutely get ideas from readers. Sometimes questions I answer, sometimes I save I just don't answer the question. It turns into just a standalone column in a different way. But that is like it's a weird, like I love this job like as much as I thought I would, but I love it for like very different reasons. I didn't realize how important, how great like the connections that you can build with readers would be. It's like one of my favorite, absolutely like maybe my favorite part of the job. And I just didn't, when I was getting into it, I didn't realize that that would happen. So that's a really important part of you better be, and Susan's work is the same. I mean, you better be doing what people want to consume. Like, they're the boss, right? Like they're going to determine whether you're good at your job or not. So you better be, doesn't mean you have to write what they want to read, like what they're going to agree with. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you can't be writing about some random topic that nobody's going to care about.
What is your favorite story that you have ever covered?
Gosh, I bet Susan's got a great answer for this. The most fun I've ever had at work was the 2014 and 2015 Royals. That was, what I just said actually in the last answer about like the connections with readers. I've never felt more connections than I did during that time. That pre Mahomes, right? Like that was pre Mahomes, and nothing really great had happened in Kansas City sports for so long.
Long time.
Yeah. And gosh, it felt like for a long, especially with the Royals, that it was just never going to happen again. Like there were times before 15 where it felt like the Royals were in Major League Baseball, kind of, but playing at a different level than everybody else, and not in a good way. And for that group that like came up, riding buses in the minor leagues and all that together, for them to do it together and the way they did it, all the comebacks and like literally feeling, by 2014, I'm guessing I had been at Kauffman Stadium, I mean, 1,000 times, maybe. I mean, just from being a kid and then covering the team every day. I don't know, a ton. I'd been in that stadium a ton, and I'd never heard it shake or never felt it shake, until 2014. It was just that was absolutely incredible. That was the most fun. I could do this job 100 years and never have that much fun again.
Yeah, the city was on fire, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Just real quickly, I think one of my favorite stories, and I could reach back into when I was at Fox 4, a lot of human interest stories. I think those are always the ones that resonate and you remember, not murder trials or, those types of stories. But one that we did here at North Kansas City Schools a couple of years ago, we featured a student who was deaf and had been passed around to many different districts and not really taken an interest in, and we were able to provide him with a translator. And they described the kind of the breakthrough of when he finally figured out sign language had a meaning, and the interpreter was able to point to a plane and do the sign, and he finally got it, and they like described the light bulb going off in his head. And the way we structured the story, we kind of ping pong back and forth between the interpreter and the teacher and how this all came about. And it really was, I think, one of the better stories that we have done here, just because it was, that light bulb moment going off in this student who had no way to communicate until that point. And he was in middle school, in 6th or 7th grade. So those kinds of stories, when we get to share those, are, I'll remember that story for the rest of my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that is truly amazing. So what are the most essential skills that you need in order to enter your respective profession?
Um, for me, I'll start. For me, I mentioned curiosity. Um, for me, it's at the most basic level. You have to be able to talk to people. You have to, and there's different, not being intimidated, but not being arrogant. There's a lot of different skills involved in that. And then just for me specifically, I'm writing, right? So the ability to make a point or just tell a story clearly. Like I always say, like, you don't have to be there. There's certain, like, Joe Posnanski, who used to be here, just a gorgeous, beautiful writer. Not everybody can have that, right? It helps. I mean, that's great if you can do it, but I just think being able to write clearly can be just as important. Grammar, spelling, thought structure, all those things. And then just, you need some research skills. I'm sure Susan can speak to that. I mean, just the ability to, if there's something you need to know and you don't know it, how are you going to get the answer? Whether it's a phone call to somebody, whether it's a website that you can find. So research, communication, and then being able to write clearly, I think are probably the most important.
I agree. I think on the TV or broadcast end, you need a command of the English language. You must be able to write clearly and in our medium concisely. So you really need to be succinct and be able to paint that picture in a couple of words and be able to tell that story in a visual way. So you have to go approach a story from two different or several different angles, but getting the point across, being fair, getting both sides, and then also being able to make it compelling and visually interesting for someone to watch. I think a grasp on history also helps. English and civics, government, like Sam alluded to, you kind of have to be a little expert in a lot of different areas. You don't have to be the best, but you still need a working knowledge of how agriculture works, how the economy works, how government works. So you have that working knowledge when you go into an election, or you cover all these different topics that at a newsroom would cover. And then being able to think on the fly, talk, ad lib when the teleprompter or something crashes, and be able to communicate well in those situations and on camera and have that presence. But I think it does boil down to being able to write and tell and be a good storyteller. That's what it comes down to, is putting a story together that people will read or watch and remember.
Very good point. What does an average day look like for both of you?
For me, I mean, can I answer it like in normal times? Not right
Sure,
now.
why not?
Exactly.
One of the things that I really like about this job is that there's not a normal day. You can wake up and have no idea what, like, twists and turns your day is going to go. I enjoy that. I really do. And so that's part of the answer, is just a normal day involves not knowing exactly how it's going to go. And I find some excitement in that. I know that would drive some people crazy. But, I mean, there does become a rhythm though. Like it's football season right now. So, Mondays, it's off a bye week, but in a normal week, Mondays, Andy Reid will have a short press conference. Wednesdays, today, like later on this afternoon, the quarterback and, they'll bring in some coaches. There's a certain rhythm. Games on Sundays, obviously. And then you just kind of fill in the rest of it with phone calls, going and having lunch with people of not even for interviews. I mean, there's just relationship building, and you find, certain perspectives interesting, and maybe that leads to something, down the road. Baseball is different. The games are at night usually. So you get to the ballpark at 3:30 or 4 to get there for, when the clubhouse is open, to again, talk to people and build these relationships. So, there's certain structures, but I like that, that there's not a normal day. I really do enjoy that part of it.
I agree. There's no 2 days alike. And that's one of the things that is appealing to me, is that you go in and every day is going to be different. From a reporter's perspective, that person goes in, pitches the story, gets assigned a story or whatever. And I work night side. So at 2 o'clock, you were given your marching orders, and or 9 o'clock if you're a dayside reporter. And then you hit the ground and running, and you start making phone calls, setting up interviews. How are you going to tell the story? What elements do you have? Do you need graphics? That you start working on that all day. Then if news time is 5, you probably need to be wrapped up with your shooting by, say, 2 or 2:30, so you can log or pick out the sound bites that you want, put your story together. And so the editor has time, your photog has time to edit and put that together and make time during the 5 o'clock news. Having said all of that, and you need to turn a story every day. That's the basic requirement. But anything can happen at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. If there's an explosion or a massive fire downtown, you're going to be redirected to that, and you'll hold out there for the rest of the afternoon, gathering information and then doing live shots for the afternoon. So breaking news, once again, trumps everything else. And so your day can change. You need to be, and I'm sure Sam is the same way, adaptable. If you may be doing one thing for 3 or 4 hours and then ditch that and completely switch gears and be able to go down this road and cover that story. Things get switched all the time, and the assignment desk, I'm sure, knows what they're doing when they do that. But sometimes you're out in the field and you've got almost everything wrapped up, and you're like, oh no, we need you to go over here and cover that. And that's what you got to do. So adaptability as well.
And going along the lines of an interview, what type of questions should you have ready for an interview?
Oh man, I'm really curious to see what Susan says about this too. But I think it's best to, ideally, sometimes it just you don't have control over it. But to me, the best interviews are if I go in there with some things in mind, and maybe they're even written down in a notepad. But it's not, Susan's used this word, it's a conversation, right? Like, I don't want it just to be like reading the question, listening, as soon as he's done, reading the next question. You know what I mean? Like, it should feel like a conversation. I think that's when the best information comes out. That's when the other person's the most comfortable. It's when you're the most comfortable as well. So I like to go in with maybe 3 or 4 either points or questions that I'm hoping to get addressed. But you're not doing your job, I think, if that's all you do. You got to listen to the person. And Susan just talked about thinking on your feet and reacting kind of in real time. And if they say something that you had no idea, they just brought it up, let's pull that thread a little bit and go down that road.
Absolutely. I go in with a couple of preconceived questions, and obviously open-end questions. What's your impression of this? Or why did this happen? Or how do you feel about that? Never well, that must have been disappointing. Yes, no yes or no questions. And I like the conversation aspect of it. A lot of times I know that my camera guy is rolling, and I will continue to introduce myself and talk, and we'll get halfway into the interview, and he's like, well, are you going to start yet? And it's like, we've already been rolling. And because sometimes those are the best authentic and realistic sound bites, because they're still thinking we're setting up. And so we get halfway done and they've already given me everything I want. To that point, I always try to find the emotional aspect of the soundbite, not just the facts, ma'am. That's why they always ask police officers, that this has really been tough on the guys, or, if there's a bad accident. They don't want a car was driving down at 40, out of control and a person was ejected. They want the emotion part of the story. So try to get those, and you provide the facts and figures, and then punctuate it with those emotional sound bites or quotes.
So what happens when the journal part of journalism isn't a thing anymore, like the transition from physical publications to digital?
Oh man, we're there, we're there. I mean, I think I even introduced when, we were introducing ourselves. I think I said our sports columnist for kansascity.com. That's what I think about. I mean, I grew up like with newspapers, delivered to the house, and I loved it. I was, the cliche about the cereal bowl on the sports page, and that was me from the time I could read until I went to college, basically. But that's not how it, there's a better way now. There's a better way to get your information, and usually it's right here. So that's what I think. That's what I think about. We did it too late, but I'm glad that newspapers and other digital publications are chasing subscriptions. Like that's digital subscriptions, I think, are kind of the future. I think it promotes better journalism if it's all about like the clicks and page views, the human incentives, which we can fight, but they're there. The incentives are a lot different than when it's when you have like this relationship, this partnership with readers who are supporting you with the subscription. So I feel like we're there, and I'm honestly, I'm excited about it.
Just kind of piggybacking off of that, news has also, taken over social media and Twitter. You don't wait anymore till 5 o'clock to catch your news or to get a breaking news story. That's out there as soon as you get the news. It's posted on Twitter or Facebook. At least at Fox 4, we had a running tally of all of the stations and what stories were doing well on Facebook, because it's all about the monetizing and getting clicks on Facebook and Twitter. So if you saw that over in St. Louis, this story was doing very well, then we would repost it on our website and generate more interest. So there is a lot of interest in what stories are doing well on the internet, in TV stations, and that's another aspect where not only do you have to serve the newscast, you also have to serve social media when you're out in the field and get that information out. That's changed it a lot.
Okay. So we have about 1 minute left. So the last question is, what's one piece of advice that you would give to the students who are watching this live broadcast as to, in terms of whether it's career paths or that one crucial piece of advice that you'd like to give them?
Oh my gosh. This could be an hour, right? But just real quickly, I think that no matter if it's journalism or anything else, find something you enjoy. Find something, a job that doesn't feel like torture to do. Find something that you look forward to doing. You'll be better at it. You'll be more successful. But mostly, you got to be willing to work, and you got to be able to work with people. And that's journalism. That's, I think, just about anything. If you focus on those two things, you'll have a lot of paths that'll open up for you.
And I would echo that. Find your passion. If it's passion and you love it, you don't mind working, 12-hour shifts or mornings, weekends, holidays, because you do in journalism. If you love it, then it's not a job. So find your passion and persevere. Sometimes you're not going to get the first job you apply for, maybe several jobs you apply for in journalism. For every opening at a news station, they get 200 applicants. So persevere and find your passion.
Guys, this has been fantastic. I'm sorry that we have to wrap it up. I feel like we could keep this conversation going for a while, but this has been amazing. And I just really want to thank you for the time that you've taken today to meet with us and meet with our students and share your insight and your passion with us. I love that you guys hammered on the fact that nothing that you talked about is rocket science. It's hard work, but it's just curiosity and it's practice and it's, maybe it's writing obituaries for a while to pay your dues until you get into the job that you really want to do. But I think that that's such an important message for kids to hear. So, and students at home, I hope that you enjoyed hearing about one of the thousands of amazing career opportunities that we have here in Kansas City. You don't have to leave to find a job that you love, but you do need to go explore, and you need to be asking these questions and be curious so that you can figure out what's best for you, what's going to fit your personality and your strengths. As we wrap up here, we're actually 1 minute overdue. Please, when I click in here, you're going to get a pop-up with the survey. Please take that survey. It's going to take you about 1 or 2 minutes to do. That's it. And all it does is it helps us ensure that we're doing things the right way and that we're offering things that you want to see in the future. If you have any more questions, I'm sure that you can find Sam and Susan on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, things like that. Please ask those questions. They're wonderful people. They're here to help out, and they're really interested in your future as well. And if you need any more information about the Northland Education Business Alliance, you can go to nebaworkskc.org. Thank you so much again, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you again to the speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
See you guys.